that most of you already met Terence and Ian Jarman. They are with the School of Computing, and now they are with the School of Mathematical Science at the Center of Public Health at Liverpool University. And within the long collaboration we have with that university, we are enjoying now a short stay of Dr. Exers, maybe a bit longer than we expected because of the flight problems, and also a bit longer stay of Dr. Jarman. The presentation that Terence will give today is entitled Rules from Data via Neural Network. And just to give you a brief notes of Dr. Exers' CV, he got a degree in mathematics by York University in 1983. Then he got a master's in mathematics and education by Leeds University in 1992. Then after 12 years, then after 12 years working as a teacher in secondary school mathematics, he joined the department, the School of Computing and Mathematical Sciences at Liverpool University in 1995, where he was a senior lecturer on mathematics and statistics degree. By that time, Terence had an international profile in the use of computer algebra and mathematics education, also many journal and conference papers. He also authored the book of numerical analysis through Dirac, and in 2001 he started a PhD under the supervision of Professor Paulo Lisboa, and this PhD changed completely his way of his field of research, and in fact his research was quite related to the talk he's going to give today, which is basically based on methodology for orthogonal search based through structure. It's just he will explain later methodology to extract rules from neural networks. He published that methodology, the transactions neural networks, in 2006, and since 2008, due to excessive teaching demands, he resigned as a lecturer, and now he works on funded projects on Liverpool University. Lately, he has been working with Deliver, which is a very big company that is based near Liverpool, on Bayesian reminder systems for online grocery, problem games, and also in the Centers of Public Health in Liverpool. He has many journal and conference papers published in the areas of real extraction, prognostic modeling, reminder systems, clustering, and graphical models, and that's more or less his CV. Here you can start in work, and then I think we'll have plenty of time for questions because we estimate about 45 minutes more or less.
We'll see how we go.
Yeah, thank you for giving that.
Hola. Yes. That's all the Spanish we'll get, I'm afraid. Yeah, it's not been put off by the number of slides. It's mainly animations that make the slides. Just found the bad news this morning that a volcano has erupted in Iceland, and it's volcanic ash over Britain, so there are no flights. So I have a flight in the morning to go, so you may see me next week, maybe even the week after. Okay, so I'm going to talk about some work I did quite a while ago. This was basically the basis of my PhD thesis, which was in 2003-2004. It was published in 2006, and I've moved on to do lots of different things in graphical models and recommender systems since. So this is like revisiting an old friend. I found today that it's actually this paper is getting cited quite a lot. Now it seems to be becoming more well known in the community. So what are we going to talk about? Well, basically the method is completely reliant on a neural network decision service. So we're going to have a look at decision services. We're going to have a quick look at coding categorical data so that we can produce these decision services. And we're going to use a decision surface to find rules, and we'll talk about what rules are later on. And OSRE stands for Orthogonal Search Rule-Based Rule Extraction. And then I've got some examples to show you here at the end. Okay, decision boundaries, some quick look down some undergraduate work. Okay, we've got linear decision boundaries, which we can do quite easily. But what is really interesting is a situation where we have non-linear decision boundaries. Okay, something that this is why we need a neural network to be able to find a boundary that discriminates between the two different classes or three different classes, no matter what we have. Okay, decision boundaries determine classification. Neural networks form non-linear decision surfaces. Setting a threshold for a neural network forms a decision boundary. So basically, the neural network forms a surface. You set a threshold, that forms a boundary, which hopefully all your in-class data is inside and all your out-of-class data is outside. Okay, so as you can see now we're zipping through these slides, so I hope morale's high. We'll just have a little look at the building blocks of the neural network. I'm sure this is very familiar to most of you. It's based on the sigmoid logistic function. So when you do logistic regression in statistics, this is a famous logistic function, monotonically increasing the codomains between 0 and 1, which gives us a nice probability. And we look at the single neuron where we have our inputs that come in, we have our weights, we have our bias, so that we don't always go through the origin. We sum the weights multiplied by the inputs and then we go through a sigmoid. And there's just a simple example of if you fast forward through there. I'm sure this is nothing new. And then we get a response, and if you're above the threshold, normally set at 0.5, you'll get a positive response, you are in class, and if you're below 0.5, then you're out of class. Okay, so that's fine. So why don't we just use logistic regression, or why don't we just use a single node? Okay, here I'm just. This is based on a talk I gave in South Africa in 2005, where nobody knew anything about neural networks. So I put in some slides on the basics. Basically, how you would this is your sigmoid function, and we're looking at a simple example. So we can. What I want to be able to do here is I want to be able to visualize what's going on. So I've got an X and a Y input, I have a Z output, I have a bias, and I have the weights. And I want to have a look at a 3D graphical representation of a single neuron. Okay, so if we plot this, Z equals, we get this nice sigmoid shape. And if we set a threshold, basically of 0.5, so if above 0.5 it fires, if it's below 0.5 it doesn't fire. What we see here is that we get a set the threshold, and here we see that we get this is your decision surface, here is your decision boundary, this curve here. Okay, thresholds greater than less than 0.5 is anywhere in there or anywhere above there. Okay, if we look from the top, if we're in this region, fire, but not in this region. Now the interesting thing is that if you see there that decision boundary, even though your sigmoid is nicely curved, your actual decision boundary is a straight line. And basically what we're doing is we're setting this output of this neuron to 0.5, and if we just do a little bit of elementary algebra, we see that we get the equation, we get a straight line. So that's the problem with a new single neuron is that the decision surface is a straight line. But straight lines are no good for finding decision boundaries round where you get classifications. Okay, so whilst the surface generated by single neuron is non-linear, the decision boundary is linear, so we need to generate non-linear decision boundaries. And we do that by producing a network of neurons that produce non-linear. And these are basically what we come to get as a network of neurons. Perceptrons form a neural network, or otherwise known as an MLP, multi-layer perceptron. Okay, and there's a prime example that you'll see in most textbooks. Okay, there's nothing here that has hope that is probably nothing new to you. The hidden nodes, the important thing to know about a neural network is that the hidden nodes are the important nodes actually deciding how your final surface cuts the space. And it's their interactions with this second layer, the weights of the second layer, that move all these decision boundaries on the hidden layer around to create a curved surface. An important thing to note is that if there was no sigmoid on the output of the neuron, then basically all that would happen with the multi-layer perceptron is it would all become one single neuron. The sigmoid is the key to the non-linearity in the second layer. So the first and second layers would just be linear combinations of each of them would simplify to a single layer neuron. So basically the sigmoid is the key to the non-linearity. Okay, so let's look at a simple two-layered MLP. We've got, again, I'm leaving it into 3 dimensions so we can visualize it. Think of graphs. Graphs are fantastic ways of seeing mathematics. Bias term. Do you know why we have a bias term? And the reason is everything will go through the origin. We didn't have bias. So we have x and y. These are just an artificial column so we can visualize what's going on. And we see here that the hidden node 1, the output of hidden node 1 is that expression. And the output of hidden node 2, so it's 8x minus 7y, yes, and then the bias will be 1 times minus 4, and the output of the neuron, we're now to a two-layered MLP, is a linear combination of these hidden nodes, then gone through a sigmoid. Okay? Now, if we actually now set the threshold of H1 to be 0.5, and we now plot that, we see that we now get a nice straight line. That's what's coming out at the threshold of 0.5. That's what's coming out of H1, and that's what's coming out of H2. When we combine those two with the final layer, we find that we get this Z output threshold of 0.5, nice non-linear surface, and that's basically what's happening with this simple example. And if we now plot Z, so we now have our surface, and now we can see the threshold, we see a nice decision boundary that simple two-layered NLP has generated. So that there. Okay. Okay, there's a few things. I had a discussion with Professor Lisboa before we came away, and he said, please say something about the good practice that we should use when training a neural network. The first thing is that clearly a neural network is trained with training data, and training methods for using training neural networks is there was software all out there, MATLAB toolbox, NetLab. Have you come across NetLab? Right, NetLab, free software off the web, you can get it this afternoon. Just we're going to do some of the regularization that I'm going to talk about later on. It's good. There's a book that accompanies it, but you can get through with the notes. But this is MATLAB software, and I use it. Well, we use it extensively. Okay, so I'm not going to talk about backpropagation and scale conjugate gradients and gradient descent and all those things that you all learnt about when you. But basically, we're just assuming that we know we can train a neural network. What are the good practices? Okay. Variables should be normalized. If you know that you have normality, or you may want to normalize in a region -1, 1. Of course, make sure that if you're assuming that your data is normal, that it is normal. Beware of outliers, especially when doing this sort of normalization of continuous variables. Okay, because outliers can really squeeze things into small places, and it makes it very difficult for your network to train. The reason for this is because variables with large numerical values will dominate the training and any predictions that you want to make. Okay, an essential part of the rule extraction process, and also good practice in when you have categorical variables, is to bin any categorical variables. This is because do we have some chalk?
Yes.
If basically you have categorical variables, say 1 to 5, and you're basically these guys here are in class and these are out of class, and your surface wants to go through there, the neural network finds it very, very difficult to do that. So in the binning process basically means that you have a dimension for each category. So all it has to do with these dimensions is cross once. That's why binning is. And if you leave variables as categorical variables when you try and train, you'll find that your accuracy goes out the window. If you do this this binning process, you'll find. Well, in the artificial data cases, you can go from 75% accuracy to 100% accuracy just by binning. Okay, an example of binning is if you've got 4 categories, you basically give 4 dimensions to the variable that has the category values 1, 2, 3, 4, and you assign a 1 in there. That's one from binning. This is familiar, yeah? And does anybody recognise what you get there as well? It's the identity matrix. Okay, which if you come to programs yourself, any of this, that's quite a neat way of making things very efficient when you want to generate all the values. Okay, so a data set that has 4 variables, say, you may have age, which is a continuous variable, you may have a binary, or hopefully binary, depends which part of the world you're in. Eye colour, categorical nominal, as in there's no difference between brown and pink. Or, well, I suppose you could argue that there is if you look at the end scale. And then you've got categorical, which is ordinal, where there is some order. This is something we worry about in the UK, and maybe in Spain it's not such a big deal. This may be something like social deprivation, quintiles of social deprivation. A data point in this data set, say 33 male, brown eyes, middle class, would normalise such a way, and basically you would normalise. Okay, we have a saying in England, well in Great Britain, wherever I come from. that you try to teach your grandmother to suck eggs. Have you heard this? No. So what I'm saying that is basically, I may be teaching old heads things they already know. But this is the base. This is all the basis of the rural extraction process. These are the things that we need to go through. Okay, once inputs of the new network have been transformed, the training process can begin. But again, this is fraught with problems. Okay, an extremely important part of the training process is regularisation, overfitting. You do not want, especially in the rural extraction process, you do not want to be overfitting. What is overfitting? Well, training is performed with a sample of the data. Even if you have a massive data set, it's still only a sample of what is of the population. So you may say, oh, well, I'll take 3/4 out and I'll hold that as a test. But it's still only a sample of the population. It's a snapshot. You want your neural network to model the population, not just a sample. Okay, so let's see, have a look at, I spent a very happy days today playing with PowerPoint 2007 to produce these, so I hope you like these slides. Okay, so basically you're in a very high dimensional space. In a very high dimensional space, the door opens. There are vast regions of emptiness. There are pockets of data, and you may find that some of your in-class data and your out-of-class data is all spread around. What you're basically trying to do now is to find a decision surface that will envelop your in-class data to get a surface by which we can see if we can get some rules. Okay? And so we train our neural network, and fantastic, there we get this nice decision boundary, and yes, everything one side is out of class and everything outside is in class. Okay? But when you actually look at your population, if you are the deity, if you're a god, and you know what is reality, you find that you have, in actual fact, your sample is only from in here, but your decision boundary now is not so clever. And when you look at your population of out of class, you see there now that in actual fact this, although it's extremely good for discriminating between your samples, it is not good at discriminating your population. Now this is also showing this idea of local minimum. Okay? Because as you can see there, not only could we have that decision boundary, there are quite a few other decision boundaries that we could have. And some are better than others. And the training process will give you a decision boundary, but whether or not it's the one that actually describes your population is another matter. Now here we see green for go, and this should be red, but it's come out orange. It's definitely red on all my computer. So basically this is where it's got it right. So green is where it's got it right, and red is where it's got it wrong. And you can see there graphically that decision surface, although it was very good with your training set, is particularly bad with your population. Okay, what you want is to have some form of regularization which stops that sort of thing happening. Now, but we don't have the whole we don't have God's eye. So how do we go about that? Basically, what we're showing there is this will be a nice regularized decision boundary, a nice regularized neural network. So basically, all these points here inside the decision boundary will be telling you what's happening with the population and outside. It's not. So I'm taking the training data away, and I do the same thing again. Green. I forgot to do that. I wanted just to mention that's right. Okay. Maybe it was the strong coffee. Okay, so this is what we want. This is what we want to happen. This is just a graph there. There's the training data. Okay, this is basically, if you like, the region of all possible decision boundaries that you can have. And those are all your local minima, badly regularized data as well. So that's a big space that we have to worry about. Okay, and I don't know what I forgot what this one is now, but it looks very pretty. Okay, so what forms of regularization are there? Well, there's early stopping, that's one form. You take the test data out, you train. What you'll notice with your training data, your error decreases, and then it flattens out nice. Okay? But you then keep training on a test set, which is an outer sample, and what you find is it comes down nicely, and then all of a sudden it gets worse and worse and worse. Because basically, your decision boundaries going right round your training data, but your population's all over the place, and when you try and pick some of that population, put it into your network, gives you the wrong classification, so everything's wrong. So that tends to be something that is good practice. The use of weight decay, which you put a penalty term on the cost function, which you're minimising when you're doing your back out propagations by whatever method. And but that involves the parameters, so you have to do lots of cross-validation, and you have to do all sorts of horrible things. The best practice that we found, and this is McKay's evidence framework, and I will give you hopefully I think I may have a reference for this, and I know Jose knows of this. And this is basically a Bayesian evidence framework, of which the details are a little hazy to me, but Paolo assures me that it's theoretically correct. It basically gives the God's eye view that it regularizes, it's very computationally expensive, but it really does regularize the network so that it does not overtrain. And one of the great things about using this framework is that you don't need to use a training test set, you can just use your training set. It's self-regulating. This software to do this is in that NetLab. Okay, I will make, through Jose, these PowerPoint slides available to you. So there is the NetLab, and in this book there is a description of the regularization framework and the software that was in there. Okay, so there we go. How are we doing? How are we doing for time? Okay, now, once we've trained our neural network and it's well regularized, what we want to do is we want to find rules. Now, this was a big problem with neural networks, especially in safety critical applications. If you're wanting to use a neural network to put somebody on the moon, or to fly an airplane, or to deliver a drug, the expert wants to know, well, this is what I've got here is a black box. All I have is a load of sigmoids and weights, and I want to actually make some sense out of what this black box is doing. And I may want to go to a clinician and say, well, this neural network is putting somebody into this risk group of cancer because these factors, not because this, look at my big nice neural network, that tells you, as you can see, it goes with the... So basically what we wanted to do was to make this black box a white box. And the way to do that, or one of the ways to do that, is to translate your neural network decision surface into a rule that a human being can understand. And the rule could be you're in the age 23 to 50 and you smoke, but you're not a diabetic. So a clinician can understand that. That's another rule. And these are conjunctive rules. And what you find is that these make hyperboxes, or in 3 dimensions would be a box. Okay, where this here is 23 to 50, and smoker, no, yes. You have all your data inside there. So these form what we call hyperboxes. And then we can add these together as disjunctions. So you get all these different rules, and we can bring them together. So you get sort of boxes joined together. How do we have a number of ways of testing how good a rule is by looking at the data. And we look at sensitivity, which is the true positive, so the number of data that any rule that you have predicts in class to be correct. And sensitivity, which is the true positive divided by the number, and then the false positive, the number of data that the rule predicts out of class. So you may have, say, something like, so we just do this in 2 dimensions. You may have, there's your in class, there's your out of class. So basically, there's your in, there's your out. So your sensitivity is measuring how much of the in class that your rule is covering. This is your rule, your box. And your specificity is how badly is it encroaching into the out of class as well. So in English or in Espanol. How well a rule, sensitivity is how well a rule predicts in class. So if you get a value of 0, it's useless because it's not got anybody. A value of 1 is it's excellent, it's got everybody. But the caveat to that would be, your rule may be you are human. So it gets you all, but it gets everybody who's got diabetes, but it also gets everybody who hasn't got diabetes. So this is why we need specificity. This, how well a rule avoids predicting the out of class. Again, you get 0 is useless and 1 is excellent. And a rock point, which comes from a receiver operator characteristic, which is something that was developed during the war to check the integrity of signals. It's used, and again, this may all be very, very familiar to you. It's 1 minus specificity of this sensitivity, and so your sensitivity axis here, 1 minus specificity. And basically, what we're saying is that conjunctive rules, when you measure a rule with the data, basically we want to be in and around here somewhere. Okay, preferably up here, but any of these. What this is basically saying, if we're around here, we're saying that the rule is catching 20% of the population, but only of the people in class, but only 5% of the people who are not in class. So that's okay. So basically, this is our ideal counter. That's where we want to be. That's basically perfecto. Okay? And when we add rules together, what happens is that say we have a number of rules and we add them together. So the first rule, so we try and gather all the people who obey rule 1 and rule 2 and rule 3. And what happens is errors start to creep in. So we tend to start to go over towards this point over here. Okay, so the rule extraction process, get your data, normalize it, train a neural network, regularize, and then extract the rules from the network. The neural network will give us the surface on which we work. Okay. We finally got it. Okay? Finally got it. Like all things in life, simple is best. If it's a simple idea, you can program it efficiently, it'll work in lots of ideas. The trick is coming up with the idea. That was the hard bit. That took 3 years. But it was staring at me for quite a long while. It was going, hi, I'm here. I'm here. Okay? If you read the paper or read my PhD thesis, which is online, I don't recommend it. Not unless you've got particularly bad sleep problems. It's a principled approach. I'm going to show you basically a graphical approach which describes what's going on, but underneath mathematically it's very, very sound. and uses lots of atoms and Boolean stuff. But it's best described graphically. Okay, I did this. I'm going to have to redo these slides because this was done on in some software called Derive that was basically back in the hour. Well, basically what we've got here is we've got data which is in class and we've got data which is out of class. And we have three variables, A1 to A3, and they are categorical variables. These, of course, in the neural network will be transformed into these one-for-them bins, so they get very long. But we can just visualise what's going on in the nice 3 dimensions. Okay, so the next thing we do is we train our nicely regularised neural network, and we produce a decision surface. And as you can see there, hopefully, it is cutting through, and we've got blue one side and we've got red the other side, so it's cutting through the space quite nicely. So what do we do in order to find rules? Well, we stop it spinning because it starts to make us feel a bit queasy after a while. And we pick a data point, and we start it spinning again, just to give your attention. And the key for especially in very high dimensional space, things can go exponential. But your data is not exponential, it's finite. So and the data produces the decision surface, so the data will help you produce the rules. So what you do is you sit on a data point, there it is, you can see it, and you say, well, I'm going to go in orthogonal directions, hence the name. Okay, and I'm going to step through from my data point in one direction, and I'm going to see whether or not I cross the decision boundary. Okay? And here is it. I've gone, what's changed here? 3, 4, 5, 6, in class, in class, in class, in class. I have not crossed the decision boundary. That's telling me that that variable is not important in deciding whether or not we are in or out of class. So we now search in the negative direction, So basically what you can see there, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we've actually just spun across, and we don't cross the boundary. You can't see it that well there, but in actual fact you don't. So there's no change in response in the A1 direction. So we stay on that point, and we now choose our next direction. And we see there that we've gone from 2 to 3 to 4, and we've crossed the decision boundary. Okay? Now that means I've identified a rule. I'm in class for 2, 3, and 1, and I'm out of class for 4, 5, and 6. So I've actually identified that A2 must be less than 3, or equal to 3. And then I find the final direction, and I see there now, again, and I find out that a rule identified is now that A3 has got to be bigger than the value of 3. Just going through the crossing the decision boundary. Simple. Okay. So we have now gone through all our dimensions. Now obviously if you've got 27 variables, you have to do this in 27 dimensions. But MATLAB, no big deal. Twice. Press button. Go make nice espresso. Double espresso. Okay? And what we do now is we have now combined our A2 and A3 direction, and we've produced a box, a hyperbox. Okay? Now as you can see here, that the hyperbox is actually going over the decision surface, but basically I'm trying to find the rules in the data. So what you do now is, well, okay, well, why did you pick that point? Well, you pick them all. You've got to pick another point. So that's if you remove the surface, so you can see that the box is actually encapsulating but it's not getting everybody, right? And we'll put the outer class in, but luckily here, this box here, that's what you do. Okay? So we pick every point. Again, MATLAB is no big deal, it doesn't get too upset about it. And we do it again, we go out and we pick the box, and we get a new box for that data point. And so there's our new box, and we add it to our previously found box, and we now find that we've actually encapsulated all the data. This little fella's snuck in, okay? Snuck is the English term. Got in without paying. Okay, so we can measure the sensitivity and the specificity and see how good those are. Okay. So, global sensitivity specificity is how well are these two boxes together covering the data, and how well are they going into the outer class. Okay, that's great. Well, if you've got 500 points in class, that means you've got 500 boxes, which is a bit of a problem. OSRE does produce a rule for every data point. So we need to find out the good guys. Get rid of the waste of space, because you'll find that, especially if you've got an outlier, it will give you a rule that's useless. So the first thing you do is you actually may find, especially if you're just dealing with categorical data, not so much with continuous data, that a lot of rules are repeated. So the unique function in MATLAB, get rid of them. They're gone. They're all gone. And that especially if you've only got purely categorical data, will get rid of a lot of rules. Now, for each rule, we calculate the sensitivity and the specificity of that rule. And if they fall below some predefined values, say specificity is less than 0.9, sensitivity is less than 0.1, okay, it's less than 10% coverage, and you're starting to encroach into more than 10% of your out of class, then get rid of those, because those are no good to you. And they're certainly no good to your clinician, to your scientist, to your engineer, whatever. And the remaining rules are combined together in a disjunction, i.e. added together, and a global rock point is calculated. Okay, and what we do then is we keep reducing the specificity of the rules incrementally until we get up to 1. And what happens, this is an example of a particular problem. This here we've got we're allowing 0.9 specificity, and then we increase the specificity that we allow, and we add all the rules together. And what happens is, it basically comes along here, and then the sensitivity starts to drop. So that's basically what's happening, is you're starting to take out all these boxes. And all the boxes were covering lots of in-class data, but also was capturing all of out-class data. But as you start to make those boxes, the rules more and more tight, what happens is they start to come along here and then start to not perform as well, because they've got so tight now that they're leaving the in-class out. So basically what we want is this, we come along here as far as we can until we get as close to this. So then we're finding that our ideal rock point is actually covering 87% of our in-class, but only getting 1.16% of our out-of-class. Now, for a lot of people, that's good enough, especially if you're going to get a rule that you can actually give in English. That's a box. Okay, and then you look at all those rules that made this. This is a realistic example with a very difficult data set, and I still ended up with 13 rules. And these were the individual rock points that we got for each of these. So we've got all these little boxes all over the place, all making. So basically, if we add all these together, we get to here. So what we do is we say, okay. What we do is we take one out, and we add all the others that we've. Take one out, add all the ones. Does the rock point change? If it does, that rule's important. If it doesn't, it's not important, so we throw it out. And we do that for every rule. And then so that's another way, that's another filtering process. Take it out, add all the others together, does the rock point change? And then we calculate the global rock points of these. And what we might find is that when we've got those, that actually our ideal rock point that we had, maybe hopefully if I go back, let's go like that way. Okay? When we add up all these together, we get to here. If we remove the ones that are not important, and we add them together, we then will find that our rock point only comes to here. So what we do then is we reintroduce each one that we took out to see which one makes us jump closest to this, and then you keep reintroducing until you get back up to there. But hopefully, you've got only a subset of these.
So let me ask a question because we have been discussing here.
Okay.
So in the end, something I'm missing. You end with a single box or with a small set of boxes, like following the shape.
Yeah.
I will add
Exactly.
something later about that.
Okay, so I mean the detail of this are in the papers that we've written on this. So if you just IEEE explore the actual detail, and I was trying to give you a flavour in less than 100 years. Okay, so there's an example of you'll get I need to go like that. Okay. Right, so what I'd like to do now is actually just show you an example. Have any of you heard of the Monks database? No, the Monks database, it was developed in about 1992 to test rule-based systems. And it's an artificially generated data set, and it's used to benchmark different methods. So I'm just, because you've been very, very patient, and you don't look like you've fallen asleep, which I'm very, very grateful. So we've got about five minutes just to go through an example. Now the data set, if I move now over to MATLAB. Okay, so the data set is categorical. Okay, here we have 6 variables. They have different numbers of categories. This is just binary. Here we have the output. We're either in class 1 or in class 0. So yeah, you see that in class 0, you see all the different values. So what we want to do is to find out what is it about these variables that make you in class or out of class. So let's go back. What might be interesting to show is I'll run this live, which is always a bad thing to do, but it's a dangerous thing to do. Okay? OSRE. Basically, I've written code that you just take in your raw data, it does all the normalization, it'll run a neural network, regularized with the McKay evidence framework, and we'll just see this in action. So this is basically, there are about 400 rows, so 6 variables, varying from 3 values to 2 values to 4 values to 5 values. And so we'll run that, and it's just, so do you need to set it up? Well, in actual fact, I don't need to set it up because I've already done it. Rule for which classification? 1. Do you need to train a network? You seem nice talking to you. Yes, I do. Now, what kind do you want? Okay, MLP ARD. The ARD is the McKay framework. You'll come across, if you do look at Nabney's NetLab, I think he does call it ARD, Automatic Relevance Determination. Okay, so run that, and we have some nice pictures there. You can see after a number of epochs, it's trained, and then it's done the rule extraction. You can see it's very quick. On massive data sets, it's very, very quick. It's very, very efficient. And very quickly, we can see something. Bingo. Well, this is an artificial data set. This is not real. This is not reality. This doesn't happen in reality. When you're dealing with medical data, this doesn't happen. But this is to show how well it works with an artificial data set that is used in the literature to test between them. We've got bang on the ideal point, and what we see here is that we've got a number of points which add up to. Look at the specificity, all-line specificity. That's not, these rules are not capturing anybody out of class. That's because when this was developed, this could be done. Okay, so we put in a few caveats. Was what's most important to you? Sensitivity. Okay, specificity may be more important to you because you don't want to give somebody a drug with omega mil. So you can have, or you can use positive predictive value. So we'll just select auto, which was basically just goes a specific count. And it's telling me that it's found 4 rules. Okay, so display all the rules or progress first. Now, in reality, you would just want to step through the rules. And you see there that the first rule is here. And I'm going to add the second rule to see how well I step up through the rock point. And now you can see I've got up to a sensitivity of 69%, is that? And no, I've not got anybody out of class so far, so I'll go on, and I'm now up to 83%, and now I've gone all the way. Ask me for a title. Months 1. There are 3 of these. Now, this is very interesting because if I just make that a little bit bigger, what my software does is it returns the rule. How many of the in-class it got, how many of the out-of-class it got, and the values. And then, as you add the rules, and we've got a hierarchy here. So the first rule is that variable 5 equals 1. Okay, and that's capturing 108 of the 216 in class and the 216, and none of the 216 out of class. Rule 2 is collecting 48, 48, 48. And basically that's saying variable 1 equals variable equals 1, variable 2 equals 2, variable 1 equals 2, variable 2 equals 2, and variable 1 equals 3, variable 2 equals 3. And those 4 rules are actually completely describing everybody that's in class. Now when you look in the literature, for the person that developed this artificial data set, to find out what rule he used, or she used, to generate that data, that's the rule that generated that data was that A5 equals 1. Whoa! Yeah. And that A1 is the same as A2. And A1 and A2 both have the variables 1, 2, 3. So in actual fact, it's picked out exactly what the rule is. And just another thing that's what's telling us is very important is there are 6 variables in this data set. Okay, only A1, A2, and A5 are important, so it's doing feature selection. And the nice thing about only A5, A1, and A2 being important is we can visualize that. I hope. Okay, and it should be. I thought I'd open these. And best ruler in the world. I must have. Okay, so if we look at holding this up. Come on, Matt.
Not completed the code.
Sorry, yes, it doesn't tell you everything, does it? Okay, let's see. I'm sure that I'd open these figures, but I'll have to. There we go. Now, here we've got A5, A2 and A1, this must be A1. And as you can see, by just picking out those variables, you can see some order. Now, what would be really nice would be to say, can we have a look at the decision surface that the neural network that we developed. Now, I wrote some software that would interrogate a neural network and plot its surface. And also, they say that neural networks are smooth decision surfaces. This is basically, it looks like, I was really shocked when I first plotted this because it's extremely smooth. Okay, but this is just a neural network regularized. You can see here how the decision surface was one. And look at this tunnel here. Let's have a look inside there. There are a lot of points here. But if we just move this around, we can see that the decision surface, these are your out of class, and there's your in class. But it's a very nice graphic of. And that, so you actually now see visually a neural network. What I also did, which I thought I'd saved, yes. So that should actually, so there we're seeing the success, A2, A5, you can see visually the separation, you can plot the surface. We've got that from there. If we now look at, what happens if you just look at any of the other variables that the rule extraction didn't say was important? Which was A4, A6, and A3, I think. Was it A3? Yeah. Okay? And if we look now at that data, and we try and spin that round, come on. There we go. You see there that using those variables, it's completely mixed. So the rule extraction is found as our variables. It's also found our boxes. What it will have done, if we go back to here, it's basically found that box, and that box, and this box down here. It will find all the data. I'll try and get back to there. Okay. The paper which describes the OSRE process is that there. If you just do IEEE, OSRE, Etchels, Lisboa in Google, it will go straight to the paper through. In fact, I can probably show that. This was an example of a paper where he was the main author, and Liz Paolo and Ian and I did the rule extraction blind, we haven't a clue, and it's found that the OSRE for this particular problem in bioinformatics is it's the state of the art for this particular problem. So it seems that it's brought to you by the University of Valencia. There you go. And so there's a paper if you want to fill in any of the blanks, any of the details. I think I've done enough now. I'm fed up. I need a strong coffee. Okay, I think I'm finished there. Thank you. And the hard part.
Have any questions? Yes.
So, now that I understood that you don't have a box but an L-shaped thing
Yeah.
in the air, so the question is, I mean, when you strike rules, these rules are supposed to be understood by the user,
Yes.
but the intrinsic nature of the nonlinear
Yeah.
shape of
yeah.
the decision boundary is going to give you
Lots.
a union of things following the surface.
Mhm.
So I don't see how this in general is going to be more understandable than just looking at the surface.
Yeah. So what you mean?
Or
yeah,
in
yeah.
other words, I mean, the key idea of the method, I think, which is computationally really nice, I see that, is that the original features you have are good in order to understand the problem. You know what I mean? I mean, the original set of features you have, the
Yeah.
dimensions of the space,
Yes.
are the right choice. They are meaningful in a way because you are assuming your rules are going to be a set of
Boxes. Yeah.
boxes
Yes.
or boundaries in
Yeah.
this representation. But what I'm arguing is that in general, if the surface goes in a complicated way in that
Yeah.
space, maybe it would be more understandable rule that change the representation.
Yes. Well, it would probably be more accurate, you mean, because you're following. But the thing is, a layperson can understand you're either this and this, or this and this. Then you see,
But if you read this person very set of or then.
Oh yeah. which is why a hierarchy is, and even in this simple example with the monks.
Yeah, that's a nice thing.
What you would do is you would have your most important
Which is the
one at
most
the top,
important box,
which is
the
what-
bigger one.
and you say this captures so many people in class and so many out of class, and then so what we do then is we are going to refine.
It's like
So even if you still, even if you
approximation to the surface.
yes,
And what you have to appreciate is these are mutually exclusive rules. Most rule systems are mutually exclusive.
yeah,
I
classification.
missed that point, I missed that
Yes.
point. So
these
you
are,
have a big box and then you have
yes. So
little boxes,
no, they can overlap. The box can overlap.
then they are not mutually exclusive.
Not mutually exclusive at all. But the benefit is if a doctor needs to understand the neural network, he won't make a decision if he doesn't understand the reason why that neural network makes a decision. And so it doesn't matter to the doctor if a rule is this is the most important rule, and if this is another rule which adds extra information but is clinically relevant and it overlaps, that doesn't matter to the doctor. He understands why that neural network is working and will make a decision on treatment. And an important bit is he can audit the neural network to say, I made the decision because, not because the neural network told me, because the patient is over 60, we've done a breast cancer analysis, the tumour is so large and it may be estrogen positive, where they allows you to use a specific drug called tamoxifen. The neural network found that rule, but the doctor could not prescribe a treatment until he understood why. And the benefit of using overlapping rules, it allows the doctor to understand and then to make a decision based on the neural network. And most rule extraction, I think this is the only one we found which allows us to use overlapping rules. And we say it's the benefit is the understanding and not the very difficult rule. The benefit is the understanding to the clinician or to the user, or in business, the marketeer. If he needs to do a marketing campaign, they need simple to understand a reason why they want to take an action, and not a complicated set of rules which are mutually exclusive and describe fully the surface. But they understand 3 simple rules which overlap, they will take a decision, and big decisions sometimes.
Also, I think a final thing to add also, it doesn't have to be a neural network. It can be anything that generates a decision service. So logistic regression, it's a simple support vector machine. Although, if anybody's interested in doing some research, that hasn't been done yet, using a support vector machine and this. So if you have a PhD student that's looking for a project, there's an idea, because we just... Okay?
Any other questions? I do have a curiosity about role structure. Have you thought of maybe going a step forward and trying to extract, instead of crisp rules, fuzzy rules? I mean, I don't know how, but maybe trying to, instead of having that short crisp rules, maybe they are more informative to work at some point in real applications with fuzzy rules in which you can say that's not what is over 60, that patient doesn't need to be over 60, but maybe fits all, which means that maybe he is over 50, 55, let's say, because a certain membership to find that group. Have you thought of it?
Well, what we have thought of is in fuzzy systems,
Yeah.
you need rules, which you generate not from the data, but by experts. But from experts.
You can generate from the data as well. It depends on some fuzzy systems. But my question was not that. My question was more related. If you have thought of a way, instead of extracting that kind of rules, maybe extracting other kind of rules.
No, we haven't taken that any further. I mean, that's future possible research. We haven't looked into that, because what we wanted, basically the idea for here was just to be able to have simple block rules that you can give to a non-mathematician. So does the fact that they are over 60, that they don't smoke, that they are diabetic, that they drink so many units of alcohol. Okay, does that, like, to put them in this classification, does that make sense to you? But that is a future possible that we look into the fuzziness.
And maybe related to it, because you focus on classification problems, because you're looking for the decision boundary. Maybe, I don't know if you have thought of working with modeling problems as well, in which you would need thresholds as well to define artificial classes. Maybe that's a way fuzzy logic to establish this kind of fuzzy thresholds to have like a continuous modeling. I don't know, is that an idea, but I think it's maybe an interesting way of extending.
Yeah, we have talked about regression, haven't we? So it's looking at by changing thresholds.
We've got lots of ideas, but our funding has taken us in different directions, and we need money.
So I'll leave a hat at the door as you leave.
We do have ideas.
We don't have money, some money. Happily accept.
Okay, I think we all deserve a drink.
Any other question?